Hello, welcome to Chapter 2, homework questions 41 through 45. Question 41, if y equals 1/2 x minus 4, what is the slope of the line? Based on what we have learned, we know that the slope of the line is the coefficient in front of the x value, so our slope would represent 1/2. Remember, that's the growth rate. What is the y-intercept of the line? Once again, from what we had talked about, the initial value where you're starting represents the -4, so we want to write this as a point, though, because it is an intercept. It's a point on the graph, and that's at 0, -4. And then part C, we want to graph that. So we want to plot the point first, because if we only do the slope, you can have a slope of 1/2 all over the graph. So right now we just want to plot the point 0, -4, which is our y-intercept. And then your slope is 1/2. So remember, that's your change of y over your change of x. So we're going to go up 1 and to the right 2. And so each one of these represents 1 unit. And then up 1 to the right 2. And we could do this a couple of times if we need to. You can also go down 1 and to the left 2, because remember, -1 over -2 is still a positive 1/2. And then you can graph that a little bit better than me using a straight edge. Question 42. Without graphing, find the slope of each line described below. So on part A, a line that goes through the points 4, 1, and 2, 5. So remember, our slope, once again, is the change of y, or delta y, over change of x. And when we're looking for change, we do the difference. So we can do the change of y is 1 minus 5. And then for x, it's 4 minus 2. Make sure that you're just paying attention to the points. So the 4 and the 2 are your x, and the 1 and the 5 are your y. Go ahead and subtract. That's -4/2, and then reduce if you can. In this case, it would be -2. So m, or our slope, is equal to -2. On part B, a line goes through the origin and the point 10, 5. Now, it says the word origin, but it doesn't give the ordered pair, so we have to know and understand that the origin is the intersection of the x and the y-axis at 0, 0. So once again, we'll do the change of y over the change of x. So we subtract our y values, so 0 minus 5 over 0 minus 10, that's the change of x. This one we get -5 divided by -10. You can reduce that fraction to 1/2, or you could write it as 0.5. Either way is fine. They're both the same value. So on this one we have a slope of 0.5, or 1/2. On part C, a vertical line, one that travels up and down, that goes through the point 6, -5. Now, from what we talked about with the vertical line, if you do the change, if you don't know what this one is, and you do the change of y, well, the change of y can be a lot of different things. It depends on which point that you choose, but it's going to be some number. All right, it can change. If you're going up and down, it'd be 1 unit, 2 units, whatever. But what the big thing is, the change of x, it's not going left and right, so the change of x will always be 0. So what is a number divided by 0? Well, you can't divide by 0, so it's undefined. So with a vertical line, we get an undefined slope. All right. And then the last one, D, a line that goes through the points 1, 6, and 10, 6. So this gets back to what seems to be about the same type of problem as A and B. So the change in y is 6 minus 6 over the change in x is 1 minus 10. So on this one, what you'll notice is you get 0 over -9 or 0 over +9, depending on how you subtracted the 2 points. But either way, 0 divided by a number is 0. What does that tell us about this line? When we have a slope of 0, that means we're going to have a horizontal line compared to C, which is a vertical line. Question 43. Miss Kai's class is studying a tile pattern. The rule for the tile pattern is y equals 10x minus 18. Khalil thinks that figure 12 of this pattern will have 108 tiles. Is he correct? Justify your answer. Well, because we have the equation, we can figure out any figure number that we want by plugging it in for x. Remember, x is your figure number. So if we need to do figure 12, we'll just plug it in. Y is equal to 10x minus 18, so I'm going to replace the x with figure 12 and see if we get what Khalil got, which was 108 tiles. So 10 times 12 is 120. 120 minus 18 is 102. So actually figure 12 has 102 tiles. So let's make sure we answer the question. Is that, is Khalil right? Is he correct? And then make sure we justify, which we did a little bit of work here. But we have found out that Khalil is incorrect in what he thought. And the reason is that we actually figured out that figure 12 has 102 tiles. So once again, don't forget to justify your reasoning on these. On question 44, state the slope and the y-intercept of each line. So since they're written in the form y equals mx plus b, as a reminder, m represents your slope or growth rate, and b represents the y-intercept, or at least the y-coordinate of the y-intercept. So on part A, we have a slope of 5/3. And then the y-intercept, don't write -4, but write it as an ordered pair, 0, -4. We want to make sure that it is a point on the graph. B has a slope of -4/7 with a y-intercept of 0, 3. And then on C, that one looks to be missing some things. So let's plug in what we don't see. We don't see the x and we don't see the b. The reason we don't see the x is because it's 0 times x. And we didn't maybe think we saw the b, but it is that -5. That's your constant. So knowing that, we now know the slope is 0, and we know the y-intercept is 0, -5. And we also know that this represents a horizontal line because the slope is 0. Question 45. Evaluate the expressions below for the given values. So they're going to give you some additional information to plug in. You're going to plug it in and you're going to get a value back. So negative x squared. Remember with this negative, the negative is not in parenthesis there. So only are you squaring the x value, and then the negative stays out front. So I'm going to put the negative and then square the x. So it kind of looks weird because you have the negative out front and then you're squaring the -3. There's 2 x's on this one. You need to make sure you plug in -3 to both of them. So -3 squared is 9. That's the answer right there, but then that negative still follows down, and 3 times -3 is -9. So what's -9 minus 9? -18. For B, we have 5 minus the quantity x minus 2. X is -1, so that's -1 minus 2 squared. 5 minus -3 squared. -3 squared is 9, so 5 minus 9 is -4. On part C, we have k is -1, so we have -5 divided by -1 plus 1. And what you're going to notice on this one, -1 plus 1, fix that, -1 plus 1 is 0. Well, -5 divided by 0, as we talked about earlier, is undefined. So is there a value that we get back when we plug in k equals -1? And the answer to that is no, and part of that is if we talk about our domain, what we can plug in for x, you can't plug -1 in because you're dividing by 0. And then on to D, got a couple things here we need to plug in. We have the absolute value. X is 2, so 2 over x plus y, so that'd be 2 plus -3. Don't take the absolute value until you have all that simplified. Minus, once again, the negative is not being squared, so we just plug in x, which is 2, and then plus y, or plus -3. So we got a little bit of work here. The absolute value, that's 2 divided by 2 plus -3 is -1. Minus 2 squared is 4, and then plus -3 is -3. 2 divided by -1 is -2. The absolute value of -2 is a positive 2, so now you have 2 minus 4 minus 3. 2 minus 4 is -2. -2 minus 3 is -5. So there are your evaluating expressions given the values for the variables that are in the expression.